In this episode, my friend Kayur Shah sits down with me and he shares with us his experience from his initial exposure to the infinite banking concept to becoming his own banker and then on to becoming an authorized NNI practitioner. I had fun and I hope you enjoy listening. Thank you.
That's also another thing, we touched on earlier is education piece, right? It is a lifelong asset. It is something you have to, for younger folks, realize that if you're in your 30s or 20s or 40s even, you have to plan on managing this for the long term.
Yeah.
And so, like you, I like to provide great service to my clients, but who knows what happens in 20, 30 years from now, right?
Yeah, right.
They need to understand how to be able to use this on their own. And that's the first step in knowing, and getting the system is being able to manage that and handle it yourself if you need to.
Yeah, no question. No question about that. So it's really a lifelong of learning.
Yeah.
And we all learn from experience. And when you start applying and, practicing, you learn. And the more you learn, then, of course, that's experience. And then the more experience you have, your confidence level goes up.
Yeah. And that's when I, talking to agents and whatnot, I think that's more of a good indicator, right? If they're having those kind of discussions versus trying to say the structure versus that structure right off the bat. Now, personally, I bought policies for me and my family of all kinds of different structures. Yeah. They make sense for what I was trying to accomplish at that time. Yeah. There's no one size fits all.
Exactly. Even in your office.
Yeah.
See, even in your family, not one size fits all.
That's right.
The idea that's where you even start to make a decision is from an illustration is wrong. And then a ratio of premium split allocated between PUA or base is wrong. If you back up and look at what you're trying to do. But it's very hard as a young man or young individual, young person. When I was 18, 19, and 20, I couldn't see myself at 55 or 60 and had, no idea what you'd be doing. And I remember being young enough and, I wasn't sure I was going to make it to age 30, much less 40, But one thing's been consistent in my life. I love people. I love being around people. And there's always a need for capital. Yes. And it doesn't go away. It doesn't necessarily diminish. Everybody's doing different things. But, the need for capital does not go away.
To add to that, the need for capital is going, but also how you warehouse and store it is very important too, right? One thing that I've really taken away from IBC is that when you reduce your opportunity cost and you have a good place to store your wealth, reduces the FOMO, right? If you have a lot of capital and it's not in some sort of plan for it, right, or in some sort of structure like this, you're always looking, what should I do next? I got to put this to work. And you may take on some risks you may not want to, just because you're afraid that, it's just sitting there doing nothing. Mm-hmm. Now, in this type of paradigm, it eliminates a lot of that. I wait for good deals to come to me, good opportunities to come to me, and I'm okay if they don't, then I'll wait.
I love that you mentioned that because I've suffered from FOMO my whole life almost. It's like, I just want to know everything that I can possibly know and, and participate everything in everything that I can, at least have an interest in and patient capital. Patient capital. I think Stern, Stewart, in EVA and Nelson's book, patient capital. I can focus on just paying a premium because I'm telling you, premium is premium is premium, and the problem is the problem, and the premium is the solution. When I say premium is premium is premium, what I mean is, this idea that base is premium and then the PUA is cash is erroneous. It's all premium. Premium is the solution. Why? The cash value is a derivative of the premium. We all have a need for capital that gets greater and greater or doesn't go away. Yep. So premium, premium, premium. If I just focus on that, right, the idea that an opportunity attracts capital. That's a paradigm of Wall Street and no, it's capital attracts the opportunity.
That's right.
So the FOMO does go away. The fear of missing out does go away. This urgent need that I have to deploy the capital diminishes greatly. Really to the point, like, I love it. It's like you focus on accumulating capital, and that's patient capital. And then, you can say, oh, this is a deal. I want to participate in that, or no, I don't. And you're fine either way.
Yep. Right. And that's what I kind of called my agency Engineered Capital.
You call what?
My agency, I named it Engineered Capital, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's my background in engineering, obviously, but also I'm engineering these capital solutions for individual to the person, right? It makes sense to be able to accumulate it properly, store it properly, and deploy it properly. And that's really engineering problem sometimes.
Yeah, it completely is.
Yeah.
I think that if you build the right foundation, and if you're going to build a foundation, especially in Texas, we have this clay soil that moves, expands and contracts 47 times throughout one season. You probably need to have your foundation engineered.
Yeah. So when I hire engineers to work for me, there's two kinds of engineers I see. The ones that don't have a lot of they don't know all the variables, all the things up from that right, and they get frozen. They can't function. They can't ever finish a project because there's too many unknowns. They can't manage it right, and that's not good. There's other engineers. They know there's known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns, right? And they think about that, and they strategically design something or build something that can handle those, right? With enough flexibility that if something comes out from left field, it's not going to fall apart.
Yeah.
And so I think that same kind of thinking needs to apply to setting up somebody with IBC and these structures for policies and whatnot.
I see you're an engineer. You think like that. I love it. I'm just a layman. I'm like, okay, right foundation, the correct, as much flexibility without jeopardizing the integrity of the policy and the structure, over time. And the future is unknown. I love the way you said it. There's knowns, unknowns, and
I think that's when people start talking to me about these online, these kind of I think you refer to as Frankenstein policies, right? Why wouldn't I do this? And I start talking to them, there's unknown unknowns out there, right? There's some things you can't really design for, but you need to know your design has to be able to handle some sort of, flexibility and, shock to the system.
Yeah.
And so they start talking like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I don't want this thing that only works in one case, and if everything goes well, that's not a very strong system. Yeah.
When does everything always go right?
Right.
So, cool. What else you got? It's good.
So I guess you want to go back to some examples we talked about, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to go wherever you're leading, sir. Share with us, because you got a great story. 20 years an engineer, DOD.
But yeah, on that note, IBC also has, I've always been, an investor and entrepreneurially minded, but I always had this kind of the golden handcuffs, right? I was at this W-2 job that, I got a great opportunity. I learned a lot of great stuff, a lot of great skills. I started there as a student intern. It was a really good opportunity, but at the same time, it probably, having that, took away from the entrepreneurial side of me, right?
Yeah.
And so now that I'm getting more into the IBC and more just being my own agent and whatnot, the entrepreneurial side is coming more to the forefront, right? And so I like that. That's less dependency on a W-2 type income and whatnot, and more just on myself. And so that's very valuable too. But I think another good example, a couple of years ago, we were in the middle of buying a new home for my family. And this wasn't just for investment, just for us to live in. But so I found a house. And
does that mean you gave more for it than you would have if it was an investment property? I'm just asking.
No, well, actually, just kind of digress a little bit. Originally, my parents are a little older, and so I wanted to do something to help take care of them as well. So I was going to build a house and have a guest house for them to live in. But then my mom, she really likes her neighborhood, her neighbors and whatnot, so she didn't want to leave that.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, well, a house popped up in their neighborhood right across the street, my parents.
Wow.
And so I accessed capital, and I jumped on it, and I got it, right?
So you had to give a little more because your mama lived across the street.
That's right.
I don't know that. I'm just saying.
But, at that time, I didn't have enough in my system to finance the entire house, right? But I had enough to do the remodeling. I had enough to do some repairs to the pool and whatnot. I had enough to upgrade the swamp coolers to AC. I had enough to put in, some new upgrades. And I had the time, the house I was living in, to fix that up to become a really good rental, right? I got rid of all the carpets and things and made it really low maintenance. I got rid of I had a lot of landscaping there because I was there and I was maintaining it, and then I moved to Xeriscape when I wasn't going to be there to watch it all the time, right?
Right.
And again, creating more just flexibilities for me, right? And having IBC there, the intangibles is what? I could wait to move into my new home, get all the work done, not be there while a bunch of contractors are working in and out, right? That's never any fun. And then also at the same time, I was fixing up a property that was going to be cash flowing to pay back those loans. So it was just a really good way to make it happen. And it could be a real stressful time buying new homes and moving and doing these things. And it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, that's interesting. When was that? A couple of years?
That was about 2.5 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, it was about the same time. I don't guess I put that together because we were, living in the house that we had lived in, purchased, remodeled it, like 17, 18 years prior, 16 years prior, something like that. And we were looking, right? Well, we knew we had to upgrade the one we were living in to sell it. And then we decided to put a pool in it just to, satisfy us if we had to stay there, wanting to move, wanting to buy another house somewhere. So we made those improvements, and financed through the infinite banking concept. And then we found another property and we remodeled that, made some improvements, not 100% remodel, but a lot of work, doing both of those at the same time. I didn't really put that together, the timeline. We kind of went through something very similar on the same timeline. But it does make a difference when you don't have to go down to the bank and...
Yeah, I like when I think you had a previous guest, Jerry and Becky, and they said, I just fire my contractor if I want to.
No,
I thought that was great.
He would too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's just a different way to operate. Again, when you have that type of control, you see the world differently. You operate differently.
Yeah. And even without the infinite banking concept, you'd have done that anyway.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you were going to do that anyway if the opportunity rose, and you were going to do it anyway. So, you just increase your control and I bet you're, for me, my blood pressure would go down and, not have to worry about being dependent upon someone else and their timeline. I can't imagine building a new home today and have the banker's inspector come out, every, 3 weeks or whatever to make sure that, the percentage of the job matches the percentage of the draw, and just having that one more thing to deal with while you're building,
Right.
It's like, no, thank you. All right. So that was a couple of years ago. And did you become an agent at that time? Is that about the right?
Shortly after that, I became an agent.
So your life's been pretty, robust with just infinite banking, becoming a client, using it, and then becoming an agent. Well, maybe share some experience with becoming an agent and how that went, and then some of the things that, maybe other clients that you have. Whatever you're willing to share.
Yeah,
and I don't want to.
For me, again, I never came in this looking to become an agent from the outset. But going through and seeing the power of it, I really wanted to get some people in my life involved. So that was the only way to go.
At the end of the day, you just wanted to help people you cared about, right?
So then it took for me a long time to be comfortable. I knew it was good for me, but to be able to be responsible for other people's, finances and cash and money and wealth. It took me a long time to say, am I capable and comfortable doing that? It's
a little humbling, isn't it?
Yeah. And so that's when we started talking to you quite a bit about this and picking your brain and learning from you. And the mentorship was very valuable. Got me to the point where I was really ready to take that on. Yeah. So then we talked about that. I got my license and we started going down the NNI practitioner think tank. Yeah. And got through that. That was a great course, I thought. For me, it was a good review on a lot of stuff because we already discussed most of that stuff prior to doing that. Yeah. And so that was, it's like starting another business, right? So you got to figure out all the little, odds and ends and all the administrative functions.
Look at that. And you're in 4 businesses. You got DOD, the real estate, infinite banking, and what's your other one? Yeah, maybe there wasn't 4.
Yeah. We may want to cut this next part out, but one of the things that I kind of do now with my policies is I got into trading stock options, and I use my policies as kind of the way to cover those. So that's been actually pretty lucrative, especially in these volatile markets. And
well, why don't you just do a margin account?
Why? Because I control this, and I have the ability to move in and out as fast as I want to.
So you don't give yourself margin calls?
No, nope. I have nobody. Yeah, I'd probably rather cut that part out. Probably I don't know if we want to tell. There's a lot of risk in that. I don't know if we want to put that.
No, we're not giving any kind of investment advice. If you like to trade options, that's what you do, and you're not telling anyone to trade options or not. And it really doesn't matter what the outside investment is, right? Okay. If you happen to like that, and it whatever it is you're going to finance, because we all finance everything we purchase, period. We either give up interest we could have earned elsewhere or otherwise, or we directly pay interest. So if I'm on a margin call, I'm directly paying interest. Directly. Right? And
so, I think that note you just brought up, you're always paying interest somehow, right? I think that was a big savings from IBC as well. I was always a cash buyer, right? I didn't even think about it. I wasn't valuing my capital appropriately.
Exactly.
And so,
but you'll value somebody else, and it's all normal and natural. That's the way we're brought up. It's like pay cash. You don't get into debt. The borrower is, servant to the lender. Nobody wants to be in that position. Although I personally believe that we're born in a debt construct against our will. We had no knowledge. We had no choice. That's the narrative that we live in. So I get that paying cash. And the cash buyer, they have a very hard time thinking through, why would I pay somebody interest when I can go pay cash? And so that all of the intangibles of what, is going to go on over and over and over throughout your life. And no matter what you invest in, your money went into a life insurance policy first, and then you're investing in what you were going to invest in anyway.
Yeah, that's
but then you have more control.
You have more control, and your money's working multiple places.
Right? Yeah, and you have the life insurance policy. The tax-free income in retirement, passive income in retirement. A legacy, the death benefit. You can't discount the death benefit. I know it's greatly discounted in the infinite banking world, but there's a value to that. And the older you get, your perception might change on the value of a death benefit.
Yeah. And, death benefit is very valuable. At first, I didn't value it.
Yeah.
But I started thinking about it, a little deeper. And I saw my father grow older and whatnot. He always was accumulating, wealth and whatnot. But he never spent on himself. He always had it ready for everybody else in case somebody needed it, right? He never enjoyed it while he was young enough to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And then I with this death benefit now backing up your policy, guess what? You can take more vacation, you enjoy more time with your family, and do those things and finance it through yourself. And guess what? Enjoy that funds while you're alive with your family to do it. And that's another intangible that gets overlooked.
Gives you the permission to spend money that you might not have otherwise spent because you want to leave a legacy or take care of others.
Right.
That's very powerful. Like I said earlier, I have clients in their 90s. I have a lot of clients in their 70s and their 80s. And 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and even today, it was very prevalent that it's like, I've got this money, I'm retired, I've got this money in this account or that account or whatever, and I want to eat beans and rice. I want to live like very simply, and I love living simply myself. I'm not saying that that's a negative, but go without on things that they should not go without, whether it's maintenance on their home or the trip or the vacation while they're young, whatever it is, giving money away while you're alive, not waiting until you've graduated to give money away. That's tremendous. But I've had lots of clients over the years, and they don't want to spend the money because they want to leave it to their children or their grandchildren. In life insurance, the death benefit, I'm not saying it solves everything in the world, but it'll greatly help you rethink the idea of going without, so you can have what you want or what you should have or what you could enjoy while you're alive and leave a legacy.
See, that I think when people start getting into the IBC, I see it. People talk to me about it, right? I'm really interested in death benefit. I really want to do this banking strategy and have these cash values. And I was the same way at first, right? But you start thinking about it, that death benefit is really valuable. It puts this whole thing together and makes it work, And without it, it's going to fall apart.
Your perspective changes. I know mine did. It's when I met Nelson, it was way back. The first thing I did was I flew home and restructured all of my life insurance. And now I have more life insurance than I ever thought I would have. And I was a life insurance agent. I didn't devalue the death benefit, but whenever you solve for the banking function, Nelson says it. He's like, you're going to ask for so much death benefit, you could barely get it past the underwriter, because that's all they think about is death benefit and premium, So it's okay to have a death benefit. And this idea that, you can be overinsured or insurance poor is hogwash. You cannot be overinsured. It's possible, there are certain circumstances that could be true, but for the majority, it is not true, because we're all limited on how much death benefit we can have, just like we're limited, how much premium that we can pay. We have our own limits, and the limits are between our ears, but the industry has their own limits for us. And that's what I'm talking about. They're not, if you earn $100,000 and you're 50 years old, you're not going to get a $10 million death benefit based on that income and your age. They have limits, and it's okay to, test the limits in life, But that's very powerful. I mean, you brought up a couple of really good points that, I'm not an engineer. I don't think like an engineer. I mean, I think like an engineer when it comes to policy structure because, the very points that you made earlier, the future is unknown, the unknown variables, and you cannot know the future, right? But you can absolutely know that there are variables and unknowns in the future, and then building something as strong and not overbuilding it, not getting lost in the weeds on the structure, but proper structure is very important. And the way you put that in terms of an engineer is
that's what engineers do. They build for the unknowns and also efficiency, right? Try to do the most efficient way possible. So
and then just talking about policy structure, when do you want the policy to be most efficient? What year? This year, next year, 20 years from now, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, which year would you want that policy to be most efficient?
All of them.
Exactly. So if I pick a number, a date and time in the future, it's like, well, I want to go cash on cash in year 4 or year 5. It's like, at what expense?
Yeah, see, I think people get caught up in that too, trying to go cash on cash as fast as they can. In reality, when you start designing these policies, if you're not catching, you're very close, right? So if that matching number is in 4 years, 5 years, 8 years, it's not like you're very far off the longer you go out. And so it's not going to make a big change in your lifestyle or what you're doing. So, and so it's not worth it. The risk reward to make a fragile policy, get that go so early, isn't there. I wouldn't want to risk, a lifelong asset for a couple of years for a couple, extra percentage points, really, right?
Yeah. And I love the internal rates of return argument out there, and it's, I'm solving for internal rate of return. Nelson clearly said it's not about rates of any kind. But I get it, especially if you're an options trader or an investor or real estate or whatever, a business owner. I mean, we all, are aware of our margins and, I get it. But typically when it comes to life insurance, I can take a fragile design, and I may not know how fragile it is in the beginning, but, for the sake of argument, it's fragile. But it's a higher rate of return compared to one that maybe is less fragile or not fragile over a long period of time. But there's no way for me to, in the beginning, it's very difficult for me to understand the fragility in the future, right?
Yeah.
And the difference in the internal rate of return is most of the time fractions.
Yes. Compared to what you're doing outside the policy, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
I think, again, going back to your previous guest, Jerry Becky, I think he said, I don't care.
I don't care, right?
that was a good episode. I like that one. But like the examples I gave earlier, the real value wasn't what my policy was doing. Yeah. The real value I had was outside the policy and all these other things I was using my policy to control. Yeah,
the real value of investing in whatever that was, right? Yeah. So, but that and the value of the policy and the value of the policy to do the next deal or the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And the younger you are, there's going to be many, many more next things. It's like, So it's really simple. I mean, it's what I have.
Yeah, and going back to the engineering thing, engineers say KISS, keep it simple. Yeah. If they keep it simple, chances are it's going to work.
Really? The engineers really say that?
That's what Engineering 101 when you go to school. They don't actually do it, but that's what they say.
I'm glad you said it, not me. You said it, not me. Simplicity is a virtue. Yeah. No question about that.
And that's another thing. I think people overcomplicate this. They come in here and think this is a brand new strategy. It's got to have 10,000 bells and whistles. And then they realize, wow, it's actually very simple. It's actually very... the light bulb goes off. Yeah.
Did you wake up in a couple of years because I know you've seen the illustrations. We all see the illustrations before we put money and pay a premium. We look at those numbers, and I don't want to engineer your answer. Okay. But did you ever have a time that you woke up and looked at your cash values and was a little bit surprised that,
like the first year or two, I tracked my investments pretty closely, see what's going on compared to the illustrations. And, they did a little better than what Wix illustrated. I was like, wow. I thought that, you had a non-guaranteed and a guaranteed section. I thought I'd fall somewhere in between.
Yeah.
but I've actually felt a little slightly above the non-guaranteed. So that surprised me.
Now, in the early years too, in a low interest rate environment, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
I mean, that's very good, right? Which speaks directly to the financial strength of the life insurance company, and they're all strong in the mutual world. They're, most all of them are very strong. But it's important how a life insurance company is ran, right? And their philosophy.
Yeah.
Because it matters. It's your money. And being in the early years, so we're looking, 35, 20, 30, 35, 50 years into the future. I mean, is it gonna derail everything you've done if you're not exactly where it projected?
No. In fact, I value in that particular structure, in that particular policy, the flexibility is more important to me, right? The unscheduled premiums I can make, and not have to go through underwriting over and over again. And, that would derail me in the future if I had to keep doing that. Yeah.
That's real. It does derail. It's like, and I'm not picking on anything or anyone, but, the idea of buy term and invest the difference, if you buy the term and you don't invest the difference, then what happens? What if your investment didn't turn out, as you expected it, to where you never got to the point where you became self-insured, which means no insurance. And then you wake up at, 55, 50, 55 or 60 and, you've had a heart attack or you're not quite that uber young, super preferred guy, and then you got to go through underwriting.
Yeah, and I experienced that with some of my clients, right? They got on board with the process, they understood, and yes, this is something we're going to do this year, we're going to get to it, but life happens, so they put on hold for a little bit. In that time frame, a cancer pops up or something, and all of a sudden they're uninsurable. And now it became way more valuable than it was some 2-3 months ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, that was eye-opening. It didn't happen to me once, it happened to me multiple times.
Yeah.
So it's more common than I expected,
Yeah. Most people don't think about it, but, typically it happens suddenly.
Yeah.
Or you become aware of it suddenly anyway. You think, oh, I'm great, and go to the doctor, and it's like, well, no, you're not.
Yeah, we're still able to help those from the bank perspective, help those individuals, but again, that insurance became a lot more valuable that day.
Yeah. And sometimes that's tragedy, it's not necessarily the end of the world, but it could be a rude awakening, and just going through life, we generally are never healthier and younger than we are right now, and that's one thing too, talking about intangibles. If I go back to the intangibles, if I know I'm going to buy life insurance, not only now, but, I'm going to buy it in the future. It's not that I'm not aware of my health. We're all aware of our bodies and our health. And, but then there's that little guy that's like, you're going to buy a life insurance policy in another 3 months or another 6 months or 2 months or whatever your timeline is. It makes me think about what I put in my mouth and how
motivated to keep yourself healthy and going. That's another thing to help motivate you. Yeah.
It's like paying the premium too. It's like, I know I got a premium due, and truly look forward to them today. But it's like now, and it just kind of adds some structure. It kind of adds some discipline. That we all need discipline, or nothing that you do is going to work, right? But it adds structure. It's like, I know I've got to pay a premium in the future date. And this idea of forced savings, I get that term, and, I've used it and heard it. It's like, no, this is a long program that I'm going to practice my whole life, and it requires premiums, right? And so now I'm aware that I've got to make it happen, and I'd rather not come up with a premium on a sporadic basis. Here comes a premium. It's like taxes due in real estate. You got to pay them every year. You can either plan for them throughout the year, or you can, sporadically, do whatever you got to do, the juggling that you got to do right before they're due. So I'm just saying a consistent, path. I know I'm going to pay this premium, and I know I'm going to buy more life insurance in the future. It helps a guy like me who, I do okay with structure, not too much. I'm just saying that's a value to me.
Right.
Right.
Going back to what you said earlier, you're going to be saving anyways.
Yeah.
Right? So why not do it in a more favorable position, right?
Exactly. All right. Well, what else? What else you want to cover, young man?
Let's see.
I mean, anything you think we left out, or of course we leave a lot out. We only have an hour.
Yeah, I mean, we go back and forth, so sometimes it's hard to get your thoughts in order.
Well, the other alternative is to put an agenda on what to talk about, right? And
That defeats. I like the structure of your podcast. Wherever it goes, where it goes.
Yeah. Well, I think we ought to try to recap. What kind of maybe if we can round anything out. What you think, like. Looking back now that you can look back into history, 5.5 years, would you have done anything different, or?
You warned me about this too. I wish I would have bought bigger and started earlier, right?
Right. But when we find out, when we were exposed to this idea, we all play catch up, no matter how old we are, from that point forward. But okay, so looking back, that's very common. Wish I'd have paid more than premium, but you're still healthy, so you can still buy more.
Right. I think for me, I did the proper amount of vetting for me, right?
You did the what?
Proper amount of vetting. It took longer than I thought it should, but it was necessary. It was necessary to get the education first before I jumped into it. I think that helped me be successful with it.
So if somebody would want to vet this idea, and what does proper education mean to you, and then we'll maybe translate it on what I would encourage and what maybe you would encourage a listener to do.
Proper education, I think, is a two-way street. It's a relationship between a person and their advisor, right? Their agent. And obviously, reading the source, the book.
Becoming Your Own Banker.
Right? Then you have, I think Ryan said, made that great 7-part series. Once you get past the initial discussions, more deeper into the concept. And then 2, the agent's got to really learn about you and your individual situation. How can they best serve you? How can they best set something up for you? And that's a two-way discussion, right? You got to be able to talk with them and let them know your goals and what you're doing in life. And same thing, they got to see how to best implement them. Because early on, people won't know exactly what to do or how to do it, right? It takes a couple of years to get experience, and then they know. But that initial time frame, that's a two-way street. You got to be working with somebody who can help educate you, and you got to be willing to be educated.
Yep, you got to be willing. That's right. And so have you learned quite a bit working with your clients? Yeah.
I mean, things that I would, what they're doing in their lives is different than what I'm doing, right? And so again, it's infinite, right? Infinite banking. There's so many different applications that I've seen, I'm going to probably try to incorporate some of that what I'm doing too.
Yeah. Okay, so if you were going to encourage a listener to educate themselves, right? So it's becoming your own banker.
Becoming your own banker.
And then what else? Is that it?
Banking with Live podcast, obviously, right?
Thank you. I appreciate that. It was,
again, the 7-part series that Ryan put together. I think
the Mechanic series by Ryan Griggs.
Right. There's more books. I think there's a great reading list on the back of this book, and you can always get more information, right?
Yeah.
And so that's a good start. And then again, you got to find somebody who you can really work with and trust, and then they will guide you to next step education. Somebody can say, okay, here's where I see what pieces you're missing. You need to go get smarter in this area.
Yeah. And how would they find that? How would you encourage somebody to find that?
The first step is, the NI practitioner page, right? And then from there,
infinitebanking.org, practitioner finder.
Right. And that gives you at least a starting point, a list of people in your area that can help you.
Yeah.
And then you got to go and, do the homework and now see who you align with, see who you can work with.
Right, because everybody's different personalities. But if you're looking in New Mexico, there's only one guy.
Only one option.
That's him. Do you have clients in other states?
I do. I have clients all over the country. And so, like I said, when I first started, I thought it'd be very localized to just my area when I was doing it. And quickly, right away, the word got out, and I've got clients all over the place now.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would add to the book, reading, Becoming Your Own Banker, how privatized banking really works. But Nelson's second book right in the middle. So Becoming Your Own Banker, Building Your Warehouse of Wealth, and then how privatized banking really works as far as reading. And then Nelson's 6.5 hour live seminar. It's downloadable. It's not downloadable. I've said that several times on several different podcasts. It's available digitally. You have to go to infinitebanking.org, set up a username, and pay for it, and an account where you can access it digitally. Or you could buy the DVD series. I mean, do you even still have a DVD?
I have your DVD I have the DVD, but I don't have a DVD player.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Do you have a DVD? You don't even have a game box?
I do actually. Yeah, my sons have one, but that's theirs. Okay. They won't let me touch it.
They won't let you touch it, right? But Nelson's 6.5 hour DVD series or his live talk, I think that would do the listener very well to get that and go through that a couple of times. And then, of course, the Nelson Nash Institute, they have a bunch of videos available. You know, the Lyra Murphy's got a podcast. And so I think that there's a lot of content out there, and I think that there should be more content out there. But if you start with those fundamentals, you know, right to the source, I think it'll help. Yeah,
and to that point, there is a lot of content now, especially a lot more than when I started with this. It can get confusing, right? That's why I say start with the source, think of someone who can direct you to where you need to brush up on, right? Because there's 10,000 hours of stuff out there, right? And you can sit there and watch all day and never do anything.
Yeah, that's true. We got to notice, I think this week, that we have 1 million views on YouTube.
You don't get like a YouTube plaque, a fancy like...
somebody forwarded me an email that had a little graphic on there. I'm like, oh, that's cool. So I appreciate that. All right, what else, Kayur? So do you have your website up and running?
It'll be up in the next week or two. So by the time this airs, it'll probably be up. Okay,
well, when you have it up and running, we'll put it in the...
Okay.
Put a link in the notes below. But this episode may not be out for several weeks, maybe a month. I don't know.
Yeah, by the time I think this episode's out, I'll be up and running.
Listen, you're an engineer. Make it happen. All right. All these people are going to want to talk to you.
Yeah, this has been a good journey. I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. So you're going to stay at the DOD?
I'm getting more, like I said, more entrepreneurial minded, more investor minded. That part of me is going to start transitioning away.
Yeah. Well, they may or may not watch it. Listen, he's a dedicated employee. Quit it. Right? Okay. Anything else?
No, James. I really appreciated my time here, and I really enjoyed talking with you. Every time discussing it is always a great time well spent.
I appreciate that. I enjoy you and your company and your conversation as well.
I'm glad we got to come here and see the world headquarters in person.
Yeah. What'd you think? You got the tour.
I finally got the fabulous tour that James has been talking about, and it was, met my expectations.
Of course, it's Saturday. Most of the team members are gone. Everybody's gone but the AV Ninjas. Normally we have a full house around here, but you're going to meet all them next week.
Yep. Right? Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to the live event. I think that's going to be a great event.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited. Okay, thanks for listening. I had fun. Hope you had fun.
Had a great time. Thanks, James.
And we'll see you next time. All right.
Thank you for joining us on the Banking with Life podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe and click on that little notification bell. Otherwise, join us on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher for weekly content.